In 2003, researchers did the measurements and found that Kansas is, in fact, literally flatter than a pancake. Of course, the Earth is not flat, the Earth is round. Otherwise, travelers would be falling off the edge all the time. Right? Wrong. If the Earth was not a ball shape, but was instead a flat disk, like this plate, well, with the right density and thickness, living in the middle could feel pretty normal.
Based on my calculations, I assert that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour near the equator.
How do you know the Earth is spinning?
Well, look at the stars, mate. The Earth must be spinning to cause the apparent movement in the stars.
How in the hell can the Earth be spinning at around 1,000 miles per hour, and we don't just fly off the bloody planet at 1,000 miles per hour?
Well, here's how it works, mate. Since the Earth is so big, even though space is a vacuum, the Earth sort of pushes away at all the nothingness of space. But the nothing of space, like, pushes back.
So you're trying to tell me that nothing is pushing down upon me with perfect amount of force in order to negate the perfect balance, the weight of the planet pushing up on my feet at 1,000 miles per hour? And what are the odds that our planet is spinning in the perfect speed to account for the exact amount of gravity that's pushing down on my feet in perfect balance with the Earth rotating an arbitrary 1,000 miles per hour?
Well, I don't know the odds of that happening, but I think the Earth is a globe, so it makes sense to me.
The North Pole.
Right, well, you've never been to the North Pole, but if you did, you would weigh about 700,000 pounds.
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
yes,
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes.
Here we have Europe, drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
I'm glad you asked.
Actually, people have gone to the North Pole, and were never squashed like a bug. If you can understand this basic flaw in gravity, you have just proved that our world is not a spinning globe. Some people will say, but we've circumnavigated or sailed around the globe. Well, we've sailed around all right, but not around the globe. I should tell you, nothing in your life is going to change when you do finally realize the truth. Ships are not going to start falling off the edge of the Earth if they go too far, and your GPS is still going to work. The only thing that might change in your life at first, if you're like me, you might sleep a little better at night, knowing deep down inside that the planet you're on is completely stationary, just as it seems, and all the celestial bodies we can see in the night sky are rotating around the magnetic center, also known as the North Pole, just as they seem. The celestial bodies are just as beautiful and mysterious as ever. If you're into aliens, don't worry. It's far more likely that our visitors with the magnificent crafts we've been seeing all over the place are most likely our very close neighbors, not just some theoretical fantasy that involves traveling for millions of years through the vast emptiness of space and then somehow finding our little speck of a planet in the dark alley of our average Milky Way galaxy.
Anything as massive as the Earth, shaped like a flat disk, would, under its own gravity, naturally collapse back into a ball. This is why in outer space, everything more than a few hundred miles in diameter is round. Or so we've been told. What if gravity isn't real? What if the Earth is in fact flat and science has been wrong all along?
I mean, gravity, of course, is something that well, many people have already thought about it. It's something that we see every day, and it's not like it's not existent in our every life. But what I mean by that it's an illusion is that one would eventually like to know where it comes from, an explanation. Up to now we have, well, descriptions. I mean, Newton, of course, is the one famous for first writing down a theory of gravity. And he could describe why apples fall and why the moon goes around the Earth using the same basic equation for gravity. But he described it. He had to assume that gravity was there, and then had to write down a law that described that when two masses are at a certain distance, how they attract each other. But he was also not very happy with the fact that he should just, well, assume that these things, these objects, attract each other and without even anything in between. So if there are two masses in empty space, there's no nothing that really happens between them, but still they're attracting each other. And he thought that was kind of mysterious, and that it was something he would have liked to explain in a better way.
It's a misconception that Christopher Columbus discovered that the Earth is round. Virtually every scholar and major religion in the West accepted Earth's rotundity since at least the time of the ancient Greeks, who, for instance, had noticed that boats disappear bottom first when sailing away, and as you walk north and south, stars pop into and out of view. The Verrazano Narrows Bridge, connecting Staten Island and Brooklyn, had to be designed with Earth's roundness in mind. Its two towers, separated by 1,300 meters and perfectly vertical, are nonetheless 41 millimeters further apart at the top than at the bottom because of Earth's curvature. Vlhava believed not only that the Earth was flat, but that the Sun was only a few thousand miles away from Earth, not 93 million. He also believed that the Sun was only 32 miles across, not 860,000. He sounds crazy. Or does he?
The sun is the key to this whole theory. Okay? The sun spirals in a circle above the flat Earth. When the northern hemisphere is in summer, say on the summer solstice, the sun would be making a circle around the Tropic of Cancer. Then as the days get shorter and the sun starts setting further and further into the south, which on a flat Earth map is the outer rings, it's because the sun starts to spiral outwards. When we reach the fall equinox, and I'm talking about the northern hemisphere, obviously, because I live in New Jersey, the sun will be spiraling over the equator. Equinox, equator. This is why it's always hotter near the equator, because they're in the middle of where the sun goes to. So they're in the average. They're right in the middle. So they always have the best sunlight, the best angle and the best rays of sunlight. Now, when we start heading into winter, by the time we reach the winter solstice, the sun will be spiraling around the Tropic of Capricorn. And then it will, when the days start getting longer, it will start spiraling inwards. The clock face makes sense on a flat Earth. You ever see a yin-yang? A yin-yang is the sun and the moon circling the flat Earth. Like the tortoise and the hare. The sun, as it goes outwards and the spirals become bigger, the sun speeds up. That's how it maintains a 24-hour day. So the sun is always changing its speed, going faster and slower throughout the year. But the moon stays steady. It remains at a constant rate, and twice a year, the moon will overtake the sun. It's called the eclipse. Let me ask you a few questions about the globe. Let's just say you start drilling. Let's just say the center is not hot, and you could theoretically drill all the way through. Through the center, right? You'll be drilling down. When you start your little venture, you'll be going down. But when you come out the other end of the ball, you would have to be coming up out of the ground. So when does down become up? Logically, at the exact center of the ball. Down flips to up, right? The gravity point has to originate at the exact center point of this ball for this whole theory to work. So let's just say you do. You drill all the way down to the core. What's going to happen to you down there? Are you automatically, you're just going to like have a flip of consciousness? It makes no sense to me.
You see, the same phenomenon Eratosthenes measured could be explained by a flat Earth if the sun were only a few thousand miles away and 32 miles across. The math would work out the same.
The high altitude airplane. Remember, this is from a high altitude balloon, so that airplane is probably at cruising altitude. Notice how it looks like it's going up from the horizon. That's exactly how the sun will rise, because that plane is staying parallel to the ground. And now watch, it'll go down to the other horizon. All right, again, perspective, that's how the sun will set. And forget the big ball, that's just due to a GoPro camera. But see how the sun, that's the point of this. And then also, look at the size of the sun, man. Look at that thing. I mean, there's something to it to say that we're higher up our view and the sun looks bigger and it looks like it's not as high in the sky as it does when we're on the ground. Something to that. Let's explore this notion a bit further, that the sun looks bigger when filmed from higher up. The next 3 slides, I'm going to do a comparison, a side by side. The one on the left, the camera's above the clouds. The camera on the right is ground level.
I'm going to show you the accuracy of the sundial at Konark Sun Temple in India, built in 1250 AD. People still use it today to tell time. Let me show you a short clip of a tour guide figuring out the time, and then I will explain how the sundial works.
39 12 होने के लिए 39 minutes बाकी है, मतलब 19 minutes. Yes.
What is the time?
First
As you can see, the sundial is pretty accurate and people are amazed by it. Let's take a closer look and see how it works. The sundial has 8 major spokes that divide 24 hours into 8 equal parts, which means that the time between 2 major spokes is 3 hours. There are 8 minor spokes as well. Each minor spoke runs exactly in the middle of 2 major spokes. This means that the minor spoke divides 3 hours in half, so the time between a major spoke and a minor spoke is an hour and a half or 90 minutes. Now at the edge of the wheel you can see a lot of beads. If you observe carefully, you can see that there are 30 beads between a minor and a major spoke. So the 90 minutes are further divided by 30 beads. This means that each bead carries a value of 3 minutes. The beads are large enough so you can also see if the shadow falls in the center of the bead or on one of the ends of the bead. This way we can further calculate time accurately to the minute. The sundial shows time in an anti-clockwise fashion. At the top, the major spoke stands for midnight, and this spoke stands for 3 a.m. and this one for 6 a.m. and so on. When I place a finger or a pen at the tail of the animal in the axle, the shadow will fall on the edge of the wheel. Now I simply note the bead where the shadow falls. Using the math we did before, I can easily tell the current time precisely down to the minute. Imagine how much time and coordination would have happened between the astronomers, engineers, and sculptors to create something like this 750 years ago. If you're observing closely, you would have 2 questions in your mind right now. The first question would be, what happens when the sun moves from east to west? Since the wheel is carved on a wall, the sun would not shine on this wheel at all. How can we tell time in the afternoons? Now, the Konark temple has another wheel or sundial located on the west side of the temple as well. You can just use the other sundial that'll work perfectly from afternoon until sunset. This is the second and the most interesting question. How do you tell time after sunset? There would be no sun and hence no shadows from sunset till the next morning's sunrise. After all, we have 2 sundials in the temple which work only when the sun shines. To this question, I want to point out that the Konark temple does not just have 2 wheels like this. The temple has a total of 24 wheels, all accurately carved, just like the sundials. Have you heard of the moon dial? Do you know that the moon dials can work just like the sundials during nighttime?
The moon is so perfectly positioned that because of where it is, when we have an eclipse, it is the same size as the sun. That's why we have the eclipse. And the authors of Who Built the Moon say this: the moon is bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, and much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. When you go on and you say, where'd the moon come from? You get this story. And like so much in what we call science, that people take it as fact, it's actually a theory which repeated becomes fact. But then you go back and you find that it's a theory. And the first one is the moon was created by what's known as the whack theory, or the big whack theory. And that is that a Mars-type planet came in, smacked the Earth, great chunk came off, and became the moon. When the physics of that didn't work out, they came up with the double whack theory, where the Mars-type planet hit the Earth, bit comes off or whatever, and then the Mars-type planet thinks, well, I'll give him one with the right, I'll give you one with the left, comes back and whacks it again, the old one too. Talk about bloody desperate. And the truth is, and honest scientists will tell you, they have no bloody clue where the moon come from, and it shouldn't, by physics, be there. This guy, Isaac Asimov, a Russian professor of biochemistry, did a lot of writing on this sort of stuff, and he said this, quite rightly: we cannot help but come to the conclusion that the moon by rights ought not to be there. The fact that it is one of those strokes of luck almost too good to accept. Small planets such as Earth with weak gravitational fields might well lack satellites. In general then, when a planet does have satellites, those satellites are much smaller than the planet itself. Therefore, even if the Earth has a satellite, there would be every reason to suspect that at best it would be a tiny world, perhaps 30 miles in diameter. But that is not so. Earth not only has a satellite, but it is a giant satellite, 2,160 miles in diameter. How is it then that that tiny Earth has one? Amazing. Some scientists don't even talk about a planet-satellite relationship, but a planet-planet relationship. The moon's bigger than Pluto. The best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist, that scientist said. Another one from NASA: it seems easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than its existence. And then we get the hollow moon. This is what I'm saying, and others have said, is that it's a hollowed out planetoid. In November 1969, the moon was hit by a lunar module to the equivalent of 1 ton of TNT. The shock waves built up, and NASA scientists said the moon rang like a bell. Maurice Ewing, a co-director of the seismic experiment, told the news conference, "As for the meaning of it, I'd rather not make an interpretation right now, but it is as though someone had struck a bell, say in the belfry of a church, a single blow, and found that the reverberation from it continued for 30 minutes. It got a bigger smack eventually, which I'll come to." Frank Press from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, said that for a rather small impact to produce an effect that lasted for 30 minutes was quite beyond the range of our experience. This is a guy called Gordon MacDonald. He said in the early 1960s, it would seem that the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. And this guy from MIT said the lunar orbiter experiments had vastly improved knowledge of the moon's gravitational field and indicated the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow. Now we'll come to this bigger whack. A launch vehicle struck the moon with the equivalent of 11 tons of TNT, and NASA scientists said the moon reacted like a gong and continued to vibrate for 3 hours and 20 minutes to a depth of up to 25 miles. Ken Johnson, a supervisor of the Data and Photo Control Department during the Apollo missions, told Who Built the Moon author Alan Butler that the moon not only rang like a bell, but the whole moon wobbled in such a precise way that it was almost as though it had gigantic hydraulic damper struts inside it. These two Russian scientists from the Soviet Academy of Scientists wrote an article in 1970 in Sputnik magazine in Russia, headed, "Is the Moon the Creation of an Alien Intelligence?" And all these years later, it indicates to the fact that they were right. What they point out, and others point out, is the outer surface of the moon is extremely hard and contains minerals like titanium. Moon rocks have been found to contain processed metals, including brass and mica, and the elements uranium-236 and neptunium-237 that have never been found to occur naturally. Uranium-236 is a long-lived radioactive nuclear waste and is found in spent nuclear fuel and reprocessed uranium. Neptunium-237 is a radioactive metallic element and a byproduct of nuclear reactors and the production of plutonium. Some lunar rocks have been found to contain 10 times more titanium than titanium-rich rocks on Earth. Titanium is used in supersonic jets, deep-diving submarines, and spacecraft. Dr. Harold Urey, the winner of the Nobel Prize for Chemistry, said he was terribly puzzled by the rocks from the moon and in particular their titanium content. He said the samples were mind-blowers and that he could not account for the titanium. The two Russian scientists said in their article, if a material had to be devised to protect a giant artificial satellite from the unfavorable effects of temperature from the cosmic radiation and meteorite bombardment, the experts would probably have hit upon precisely these refractory metals. Refractory metals are incredibly resistant to heat and wear. In that case, is it not clear why lunar rock is such an extraordinarily poor heat conductor, a factor which so amazed the astronauts? Wasn't that what the designers of this super Sputnik of the Earth were after? From the engineer's point of view, this spaceship of ages long past, which we call the Moon, is superbly constructed. They say it's a hollowed-out planetoid, and they say if you're going to launch an artificial Sputnik, then it is advisable to make it hollow. At the same time, it would be naive to imagine that anyone capable of such a tremendous space project would be satisfied simply with some kind of giant empty trunk hurled into a near-Earth trajectory. It is more likely that what we have here is a very ancient spaceship, the interior of which was filled with fuel for the engines and materials and appliances for repair work, navigation instruments, observation equipment, and all manner of machinery. In other words, everything necessary to enable this caravel of the universe to serve as a Noah's Ark, appropriate, of intelligence, perhaps even as the home of a whole civilization, envisaging a prolonged thousands of millions of years existence and long wanderings through space, thousands of millions of miles. Naturally, the hull of such a spaceship must be super tough in order to stand up to the blows of meteorites and sharp fluctuations between extreme heat and extreme cold. Probably the shell is a double-layered affair. The basis is a dark armoring of about 20 miles in thickness, and outside of it some kind of more loosely packed covering, a thinner layer averaging about 3 miles. In certain areas where the lunar seas and craters are, the upper layer is quite thin, in some cases non-existent.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
South America! Machu Picchu is in South America! North America! The Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls are in North America. Pacific Ocean.
Let me ask you another question about compasses. Make no sense on a globe Earth. They make perfect sense on a flat Earth. But let's just say compasses did work on a globe, right? And it made sense on a globe. Let's say you were standing at the exact South Pole. Which way is north? Which way is north if you're standing at the exact South Pole? It's not a difficult question. The logical answer is every direction is north if you're standing at the exact South Pole. Every direction, it would be equal in distance to get you back to the North Pole. So what would a compass do? How would a compass behave if it was located at the exact magnetic South Pole? I would think it would just spin out of control. And the magnetic energy, whatever, would keep that thing spinning because every direction is north. But here's the thing, when all the people that are allowed to go to Antarctica on those little bullshit trips, they're not allowed to go to the actual South Pole. And they have a little pole down there, but they admit that it's not even located at the exact magnetic South Pole. And then they say that the pole actually moves around. Magnetic south and magnetic north move. So you can never actually find it exactly, which is, really convenient. Because then you'll never be able to figure out what a compass does at the exact South Pole. That question can never be answered. And there are periods of the year where the North Pole experiences 24 hours of darkness. When we're in winter. That's because the sun is so far, it's out by the Tropic of Capricorn, that the light never reaches the North Pole for the entire 24-hour day. And there are periods of the year where the North Pole has 24-hour daylight. And that's pretty much because the sun's circling along the Tropic of Cancer, and it's right above you. It's right above the North Pole. But these periods of 24-hour darkness or 24-hour daylight, they don't exist at the South Pole. To me, this makes sense on a flat Earth. Makes no sense on a ball Earth.
If you were a cosmic ray proton traveling at 99.99999999991% the speed of light, Earth would appear to be only 17 meters thick in the direction you traveled. So Earth is flat to them, but round to us. It is ball-shaped to some observers and flat to others.
The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat. We take some illusion. The earth is flat, living in illusion. So people don't know what to do. The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat, it's staging illusion. The earth is flat, living in illusion. So people don't know what to do.
Okay, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please. Oh, Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a beep undervolt. Roger, beep undervolt. Okay, stand by 13. We're looking at it. Okay, right now, Houston, the voltage is looking good. And we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning there.
What if the earth is flat? Living in illusion, the earth is flat. Take no solution, the earth is flat. Real no solution, so people don't know what to do. The earth is flat. Living in illusion, the earth is flat. Take no solution, the earth is flat. Living in illusion, so people don't know what to do. Double advice. The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat, take no solution.